Today I'm going to show you how to paint water using watercolours, following my very simple and straightforward process. So I think it's about time we got started, don't you? Let's get the brushes wet. Okay, the first thing you want to do is get some tape around the paper. We need to make sure this is firmly stuck down because it will warp a little bit as we add the water onto the paper. And I'm just using a low tack, nearly invisible tape. Also crease down the corners as well, use your finger or your nail. Because when we add the water, very often the water goes into these little corners there, then gets underneath the tape, okay? Okay, and grabbing an old brush, a little bit of water, drop some water into my mixing wells first of all. Probably a couple of drops or so each, something like that will do. First of all, I'm going to go for my Payne's grey. Now this is very loose now, so just squeezed out of a tube. But I need plenty in there. I'm going to make this more of a milky consistency, I'd say. Now I do have a video on how to fill the half pans as well. I'll pop a little link to the top right hand corner for you if you're interested, okay? I'd always make sure you've got more than you think you'll need. We'll thicken this down later on anyway. And then I'm going to go into the indigo and pop that one in there. Again, more to a milky consistency. And then I need a little bit of green, so I'm going to go for a little bit of Viridian green. So it's quite a bright green Viridian. Any sort of bright green will do, emerald green, you could use phthalo green, anything like that will be fine. And I think that will do for now. Now, wetting the paper. I'm going to use a 1/2 inch mop brush. And this is a squirrel hair mop brush, but you can get synthetic versions as well. So first thing you want to do is wet the paper, but wet it at least 2 or 3 times. Because at least that way around it will stay wetter longer. Now this paper I'm using today is a 140 pound arch paper, and let that soak into the paper just for a minute or so. And now do the same again over the top, and then probably a 3rd time as well. Now unless you've stretched your paper, you start to see the paper warp a little bit, and that's because it's really wet obviously on the top. Now this will dry fairly flat afterwards, but I'd recommend for this sort of method either to stretch your paper first of all, or use a block pad which is already kind of sort of pre-stretched in a way and glued all the way around the edge. Now, if you've never used a block pad before, again I've got a little video for that to the top right, okay? Okay, that should be sufficiently wet now. That'll do, yeah, that'll do. Now I'm going to use a very large brush, a size 18. This is a Pan Art Series 1181 Premium Mop, and this is a synthetic brush. So if I wet it first and take most of the water off, I could stay to that now, it's wet, I know. I'm going to start off with a little bit of the Payne's grey, okay, right at the very top of the paper, and start to paint that in. Then I'm going to go in with a little bit of indigo straight over the top. Look at that. Whoa. That's a fantastic colour, isn't it? It really is. I'm going to bring this one all the way down towards the middle, or thereabouts. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to start to increase that colour again around here. Okay, trust me on this. Make sure most of that paint is off the brush and then go back to where you started and then blend that out, sort of the horizon really. Something like that will do. I'm going to start to bring this colour down now. I'm going to increase the intensity of the colour as well, just by adding a little bit more pigment onto the paper. And then we get a little bit of our green, drop that in there as well, not much, it's very strong. Very strong in fact. Okay. And then a small amount of the Payne's grey, just down the very bottom. You find the sea will reflect the sky, so it's going to be the same sort of colours throughout the sea and the sky. Now if it's too much, take most of that paint off the brush, like so, and then very lightly, just very lightly blend and gently lift some of that paint off, like that, just to soften it down. I'm going to get some kitchen roll, all folded up like that. I'm going to take it down the side of my paper just to neaten it out, to get rid of that surplus water off my board here. A little tip as well, before you dry it, what you can do, grab yourself a size 4 brush, something like this one here, and this particular one, out of interest, is a Rosemary & Co. Series 301, as I say, size 4. And what you can do is lift off a little bit of paint in places, get some kitchen roll in your hand, like that, and then gently, very gently, lift off a little bit of paint here and there, just to lighten certain sections before it starts to dry. And because it's still damp, this will fade as well as it dries. Keep rinsing that brush out every now and then and give it a quick dry. And it's just lifting off a little bit of paint here and there to create the beginnings, the very beginnings of some waves as well. Or just ripples on the water even. And vary the thickness. You can see how well that's blending back together again. Now the only thing is, when you start doing something like this, what will happen is that the paper will start to dry. And if you look sideways at that sheet of paper and look across the sheet of paper, you find that where you first applied that paint, i.e. the top, will start to dry the soonest, of course. So therefore, you've got to be careful. If you start going any higher, then you will start to lift off more paint than you want to lift off. You want these to be very faint and very blurry. So it's got sharp edges on there, that means it's starting to dry around there at the moment. So just a few basic effects is all we're after here to begin with. And you'll find as well, if it doesn't lift off very well and just kind of blends back in together again, it's a little bit too damp at the moment, so just give it half a minute or so and then do the same thing. They can lightly blend them if they're a little bit too sharp. And I think that will do. Now I'm going to give it a quick blast with the hairdryer. Okay, it's nice and dry. We're still got our colours made up. I'm going to use a size 2. This is a Tintoretto series 1337. So I'll try that one first of all and see how well that one works, okay? Now the first thing I want to make sure of is that the colours are still quite milky. I don't want them too thick at this stage. I'm going to lower the brush up, okay? Something like that. Give it a tap or two. If you're not sure, get some scrap paper and just give it a quick test on some scrap paper. So you can see how bright it is and how kind of intense it is. And it's not too bad. We'll try that one first of all and see how it goes. Now, here we are. Are you ready? Let's do it. Oh, excited. I'm going to start further down because if it is too strong, then at least then you know you're fine further down. But obviously when you go higher up as well, you want this to be very pale the higher that you go. So when you go probably to this height here, then you want the lines to be fairly pale around that area there. Now, the lines themselves, I'm just going to apply the paint very lightly to begin with, using just horizontal strokes. That's it. Sometimes you can go a little bit wayward, make them slightly curved if you want to. Depends on the sea, depends on what kind of effect that you want. If you want a sea that's quite rough, then you need like little M's, elongated M's, that sort of thing, or bumps. Little hillocks. Anything like that. Just to create some texture on the water. That's all I'm doing to begin with. Very lightly, barely touching the paper, so literally 2 hairs and air. That's all it is. Okay, a little bit more. Don't overload that brush. So I'm going to load it, I'm going to give it a roll, pull it away, give it a tap or two on some kitchen roll, and then start to apply that once again. As you get lower down, these lines are going to get thicker and more pronounced. So what I'm going to do down here, I'm going to apply the line like this and then put some little bit of weight on the brush, then pull off like that. So again, pull off. Again, pull off. So it gets a nice sort of tapered edge. A bit like a leaf shape really, isn't it? And you can do this all the way towards the bottom. Now, as I say, the higher up the paper that you go, the thinner the lines will be and the lighter the lines will be as well. Let's do a few more now. As I mentioned, thin them out and lighten them as you go higher up the paper. The paint's great. Give it a bit of a mix because it does separate sometimes when you're mixing well. Start off with a fully loaded brush. And I'm going to go down here actually. Let's try right at the very bottom just for safety really to begin with. Just to make sure it's about right. Then add those thicker, darker lines, taper it, remember. Put on the pressure and then come off that pressure as you come away. And it depends if you want a wave in there as well. I mean, I might want a little wave probably around there. So I'm going to just lift that up a little bit there as well. I also find that if I leave a few light gaps in between as well, so you can see where the light areas are, then it's going to help the differences in colours. Even though we're using just 3 colours, at the moment anyway, I'll show you another one in a bit, okay? Let's go for some green. Oh, look at that. I'll tell you what I'm going to do actually. Oh, it's very bright, isn't it? I'm going to get a little bit of our indigo, just pop it in there, just to kind of tint it a little bit, so it's a little bit too bright, that green. Look how bright that green is, very bright. Got just a touch of this in places now. Maybe a little bit more blue in there. That's better. Try that. Just to brighten up certain areas. And these are the areas we're going to have just those little ripples in places as well. Blend this shortly as well. It's a little bit too bright. Probably a little bit down there, a little bit down there, and a little bit down there. I think that will probably do for now. Just a hint of it. Clean brush. Take most of the water off. Then very lightly blend the green areas. A bit more water there, Paul. Just to lightly blend them. Like so. I can even put a little bit of watery green, very watery, so a little bit of water in the corner there, just in places, just for a tint of colour in places around the water. There you go, something like that. Yeah. Now I'm going to do a small amount of lifting off, and this particular brush is a Rosemary & Co. Eradicator. It's a small one as well. You've got two different sizes, I think. So dampen that brush down, okay? Take a little bit of water off, not too much. They can use that to start to lift off a small amount of paint in places as well. So say, for example, you wanted a highlight coming down the centre, where maybe the sun, which is in the clouds, just catching the water towards the middle. They can start to lift off little highlighted areas like this. Now, when you use a brush like this, or you can use your homemade one, I do have a video on that, by the way, on how to make your own sort of lifting off brush. Have a look to the top right hand corner for that one. I'm going to try lifting off a few little lines here and there above each individual wave which I've got. Just create some highlighted areas there. Now also bear in mind that the further away you go again, these lines need to be smaller. So if you're going to lift off paint higher up in this area here, do some very tiny marks like this, look, very, very tiny. So they're barely discernible. I mean, just about make them out. There's just one odd one there now, look. Now, if you do use a brush like this, make sure as well that your brush is more vertical. Again, it's difficult for me to show you that on the camera because of the angle of the cameras. Otherwise, my hand will just simply get in the way. But if you have it a little bit more vertical when you're doing the lines, you find them lines are very fine and just graze that paper. That's all you want to do. Now then, let's start working on these little waves we've got in there as well. Just going to use a little bit more of my Payne's Grey. So a small amount of paint on the brush. I'm using the very tip of this brush, see how pointy it is. It's a very good brush this actually, I must admit. And then very lightly, bring down some lines and move a gentle curve. So I'm barely touching the paper here. Think about the shape of that wave. If you want to have a look at a little review on this particular brush, got a little video to the top right hand corner as well, where I review not just this one, but other brushes at the same time. And then I can get a small amount of green again, make sure it's nice and watery this time. Really watery like that. Okay. And bring down some green into that wave. Like so. Okay. So we've got a gentle sweep coming that way, haven't we, on that particular wave. I'm going to do a few more those the same way now. Don't forget you can vary those colours as well, so you can use that indigo we've already got, just to vary the colour within the waves. Let's try that now. Now then, here we go. My special little touch for this is by using a little bit of white paint. So any white paint will do, watercolour wise. You can use white gouache if you want to, or in this case it's watercolour white. This is one by SAA. Okay, there's a variety of different ones on the market. Just happens to be the one I'm using at the moment. Now your white paint needs to be opaque. If it's semi-opaque or semi-transparent, something like that, you find it won't stand out enough. Now, here we go. Lower the very tip of the brush up to begin with. You want this more of a creamy consistency. A little bit of water. Okay, so just lower that up, give it a roll and pull away. You don't need to tap it this time around. And then, straight to the paper, here we go. Start applying a little bit of white in places. Okay. Very small marks of white paint like this. Remember, the higher you go up, you know the system now, I know you do. The smaller the lines and the finer the lines, the shorter. Don't go overboard with the white paint. It's so easy to get carried away with it, it really is. Now, when you're working on a wave with white paint, what you can do, you can very lightly start to put some little tiny marks in there, so squiggle it around. So let your hand shake a little bit, like that, just to make sure you've got some small little marks within that wave. And then to the very top of the wave, bring that line down and then taper it out. Got it? Bring that line down like this and then taper it out, like so. So reload that brush. And let's do another one over here. So again, the top of the wave, then taper it out. Break that line up as well, so it's not too neat or too even. If I just reload that again, a bit more water in there, I think. As I mentioned, if I do add too much water in there, what will happen is that you'll find it will just fade as it dries. It goes very pale. So then what we can do, pull up a few little lines like this in little tiny arcs, like that, to create the sort of a wave effect. Then them lines sort of taper out as it gets towards the edge of the wave there, look. So it's quite effective that, isn't it? Just on one little wave. Then do the same with the other waves as well. But again, remember what I said, don't go overboard with the watercolour white, or white gouache, or whatever white paint you're using. If you want a little bit of light coming down the middle of the sea, what you can do is start towards the middle, like that, like so, and start to add in the lines down the centre. And by doing so, you create more of a light effect. Remember, they get smaller and smaller and finer, the higher they go up the paper there. Just little light reflections and ripples within the water. Now, if you do fancy having a look at a video on how I use watercolour white, have a look at the link to the top right. I'll see you there.